The guitar's standard tuning of E-A-D-G-B-E is so common that it's easy to take for granted. But why is this the standard tuning? In this video, you'll see the significance of this pattern and how it's formed. You'll also discover a hidden secret in this sequence of notes, and you'll see how to use this pattern to master the fretboard. So by the end, you'll have a clear sense of the real power behind the guitar's standard tuning. From low to high, the strings are tuned like this. E on the bottom string, then A on string 5, D on string 4, G on string 3, B on string 2, and then another E on the high string, string 1. E, A, D, G, B, E. It's a strange sequence of letters that can be hard to remember if you don't understand the significance of this pattern. So most people use mnemonics like these. Every apple does go bad eventually. That's nice. Or there's the classic, every acid dealer gets busted eventually. Or this one, Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. Let me know your favorite in the comments. Like nursery rhymes, all of these mnemonics are entertaining and a little dark, but none of them are actually insightful. I mean, they're cute and all, but we're not children. So if you want to understand the reasoning behind this pattern, E-A-D-G-B-E, then we have to look a little deeper, and we'll use a bit of music theory to help. To start, let's take the most basic note pattern in music, the chromatic scale, which has these 12 notes: C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, and B. On the fretboard, these are the notes you play rising one fret at a time on a given string, like on the second string, for example, starting at the first fret. Or moving to any of the other strings, they all follow this same pattern, where each is a chromatic scale, with the scales staggered across the fretboard based on the guitar's standard tuning. Where the low string has an E note right here, the string above that has an A note here, then D in this position, followed by G, then B, then E, resulting in the standard sequence of E-A-D-G-B-E. Now, already this is more useful to see than random talk about bad apples and eating dynamite, because we are staying focused on the actual patterns of music. But it gets even better because these patterns reveal a hidden structure that's sort of mind-blowing. So check this out. You just saw that the staggered chromatic scales on the strings explain where we get the pattern of E-A-D-G-B-E. But why couldn't we just align the strings in any other way? What's the significance of these notes in particular? To answer this, let's take the 12 notes of the chromatic scale and wrap them into a loop like this. These are the same 12 notes, but now in a circular formation to look more closely at the relationships between them. And when we trace the path that connects notes E, A, D, G, B, and E in order, an interesting shape stands out: a pentagram. Now, some would say this is a little spooky because many people consider the pentagram to be the sign of the devil or witchcraft, but this star formation is also the innocuous pagan symbol for life and connections, which perfectly represents what's going on here with these 5 notes, E, A, D, G, and B. Played in sequence within the chromatic scale, these notes also form the pentatonic scale, which is fundamental in music. And they sound good together because of their underlying connections within the circle of fifths, another essential pattern in music. To see what I mean, you just take the 12 notes of the chromatic scale and then rearrange them by rotating every other note by 180 degrees to get the circle of fifths. And now in this pattern, the notes are all arranged in harmonic sequence, with each pitch positioned between its closest harmonic neighbors. So E, for example, is now surrounded by B and A, the 2 notes most closely related to it. Likewise, A is flanked by E and D, its closest harmonic relatives, and D here is nestled between A and G, and so on, all around the circle. In the circle of fifths, every note is positioned in the same way, where each pitch naturally leads to the next in a circular formation. In fact, the connection between these pitches is exactly the same as the colors in the color wheel, where each color naturally leads to the next. So using colors to picture these harmonic relationships, E, for example, yellow, sits between B, yellow-green, and A, orange-yellow, while A, orange-yellow, is between E, yellow, and D, orange, and D, orange, is situated between A, orange-yellow, and G, red-orange. Together, these 5 notes form a contiguous block of colors within this part of the color wheel, or the circle of fifths, which is why, in turn, they sound compatible in the pentatonic scale, and the reason they form this special star pattern in the chromatic scale, because they're all harmonically connected as the colors show. And these harmonic connections between the notes of each open string on the guitar establish the framework of notes that span the entire fretboard, a structure that becomes clear using the colors. With the open strings aligned vertically to stack notes E, A, D, G, B, and E into a column, the rows of chromatic scales, or the separate strings, are staggered up and down the instrument accordingly. And as a result, every fret also forms a column of harmonic neighbors in the same consistent way across the fretboard. The pattern is perfect. Or better said, it's almost perfect, since there's a slight shift in the sequence at the top two strings. The low E is directly below its perfect fourth A from the circle of fifths, which itself is below its own perfect fourth D, which is also below its perfect fourth G. And if the sequence was unbroken, then G, in turn, would be directly below its respective fourth C for the pattern to be consistent. But instead, because the open G string is below its major third, B, C is shifted up a fret like this, resulting in a slight kink in the pattern. And rising up the frets, this same shift appears in every position. So due to the guitar's standard tuning, the notes on the fretboard form a nearly perfect array that stands at the intersection of the two most fundamental patterns in music, the chromatic scale and the circle of fifths, with only a small shift at the top two strings. It's beautiful. And within this grid of notes, you can pick out and play any pattern, including scales, and modes, and chords, and progressions. In the video notes, there's a link to more resources with scale and chord diagrams in all 12 keys. And really, now that you know how the notes are laid out, mastering the guitar from here is fairly easy. But there is one more thing to cover here because it might be bothering you. And it's that small shift that we looked at in the top two strings. I mean, this matrix of notes is perfect otherwise as the intersection of these two essential patterns. So the question is, why is there a kink here? If the patterns of music are so perfect, then this anomaly is a problem, right? Well, the answer is that it's not a problem. In fact, this shift in the top two strings is actually a feature, not a flaw, because it makes the guitar easier for your hands to play, and specifically, it makes every chord physically possible to reach. To show you what I mean, here are the 5 basic shapes of the C major chord rising up the fretboard. Using the instrument's standard tuning of E, A, D, G, B, E, that is. And as you can see, the shift allows my fingers to easily press the notes in each chord. The notes in each harmony are grouped in close proximity so I can play them together. With the notes aligned in this way, my fingers can easily press each one. But without this shift at the top two strings, as soon as each fret forms a fully vertical column of perfect fourths, some of the notes in each chord move beyond the reach of my fingers, making them impossible to play. So this perfect array is really imperfect in the sense that it's not practical for your fingers to use. And that's why the high strings of B and E are shifted up by a fret to accommodate the shape of your hand. Since you can bend your joints only so far, the guitar's standard tuning is adjusted slightly to make the fretboard more ergonomic. It's brilliant, actually. So this, in a nutshell, explains the guitar's tuning of E, A, D, G, B, and E. That it's not some difficult pattern that requires a mnemonic to memorize. It's simply based on the underlying geometry of music, and it's a brilliant design to make the instrument fun to play. And to explore the fretboard yourself, check out the ebook bundle at mycolormusic.com. The link is in the notes. These 3 PDFs have 1,200 pages with thousands of scale and chord diagrams in all 12 keys. In full color, of course, for you to crack the code to guitar mastery. So thank you for watching. Please let the algorithm know if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.